Out of all the joinery methods that are out there, pocket hole screws has to be one of the easiest and quickest to use. You can of course go buy yourself a jig, but they're kind of expensive. So I built my own, and that's what I'll be doing in this video. Stick around to the end for a full cost breakdown and comparison, and let's get into it. Did I plan this build? Of course. Did I write anything down? Absolutely not. My name is Ethan. Welcome to Insomniac Woodcraft, where precision is replaced with instinct, and simple projects like this one take 3 or 4 failed attempts before I get it right. The beginning of this video will be me struggling, and that really just comes down to poor planning. Looking back on this project to prepare this voiceover, I decided I should do some quick math to help any of you who decide to try building this for yourself. I called up my friend Pythagoras, who competed in Olympic boxing as a young man and even developed his own religion. In his downtime, he liked to play with triangles, and according to his theory, to make a 75-degree cut, which is 15 degrees from 90, that is wide enough to cut across a 7/16 inch hole with a little room on each side, you will need about 3 inches of blade length. That is where I went wrong on my first few attempts. I wasn't using a tall enough piece of wood to begin with, and I should have known better. But I should have clamped an extra piece of wood to this face to prevent a blowout. I tried to get away with these cuts that didn't cover the entire hole by gluing an extra piece to the bottom and drilling out the remainder of the holes. I tried to glue that piece back on, and this time I did add some extra support, but these holes just weren't very smooth. So I started over again. Here's what I'd recommend. Use a 2x4 or something with similar dimensions and drill your holes into the narrow edge of the board. This will give you enough height that a 75-degree cut will cross the entirety of your drilled out holes. I decided to glue a couple boards together to have a little more width to work with, and that worked out well. I spaced these holes out by 1 inch, and if you have a drill press, I definitely recommend using that for this project. If not, use some kind of drill guide to make sure you are drilling straight. I wasn't able to cut all the way through this piece with the table saw. I used the hand saw to continue that cut through the edge. Then I flipped the piece over, lined up the kerf line with the table saw blade that is still set to that same angle, and finished the cut. I forgot to record that part, unfortunately. But this time, the project was looking good. I set the saw back to 90 degrees and squared everything up off that new face I just cut. I bought a brass tube to use as a drill bit guide, so I marked some length and cut it down to size. The cutting wheel attachment for a rotary tool works really well for something like this. By the way, I've been posting photos on Instagram of my projects as I'm working on them. If you follow me over there, you'll see what I'm working on long before these videos come out. I was worried about having another blowout, so I was probably overly cautious when tapping these into place. Using the rotary tool again, I cut the brass tubes to the rough shape I needed, then knocked down the rough edges with a file and sanded them to be flush with the wood. I drilled a quick test to make sure I was happy with this angle, and then gently tapped the brass tubes out of the wood and marked each one of them to make sure I put them back in the right place. I used some 5-minute epoxy to lock them in place, and once again, gently pushed them back into their homes. I decided to glue a spacer onto the bottom so my pocket holes won't be too low, and if I'm working with thinner material, I can add a spacer to raise it in relation to my pocket hole jig. I'd rather have it too high than not high enough. If you are building one of these, you could stop here and use this as a clamp-on pocket hole jig. I tried using a flush cut saw with a very thin kerf to make reference marks for each hole, but in hindsight, I probably wouldn't do that part over again. Once again, I forgot to record a step. I chopped this block down to 3.5 inches wide, making sure to keep my center hole centered. I went with dowels to attach this part to the base, and then added a small platform for the toggle clamp. I chopped the base down to length, laid out the placement for the clamp, drilled some pilot holes, and sanded it all down. This project really needed a name, and only one seemed appropriate. So I grabbed some letter punches and, well, meet Kreg. I painted the letters and wiped on a few coats of polyurethane for some added protection, attached the clamp, and this project was finished. Now for the cost breakdown. My DIY jig is based on the Kreg K4 pocket hole jig, which retails for $99. To keep this comparison fair, I bought all of the things that would come with the K4, like a step drill bit, This is a Milescraft bit that I bought on Amazon. This was the cheapest one I could find that was comparable to what comes with the Kreg K4. And this was $8.99. I also bought a pack of number 2 square drivers, and these cost $5.49 on Amazon. The toggle clamp I used was $7.59. The brass tube that I bought from local hardware store was $4. And a pack of pocket hole screws will cost you about $7. But if you buy the K4, you don't get this many screws. I didn't include any cost for lumber because all of this could be made with scrap pieces that you probably have lying around. And that makes the total price of my Kreg with a C pocket hole jig $33.07. If you already have a set of drill bits and driver bits, you wouldn't even need to buy those two things. And my set of driver bits has a number 2 long reach bit included, which would work great for reaching into the pocket holes. So if you subtract those two things, the new total is only $18.54 for the Kreg with a C. If you decide to build something like this for yourself, let me know in the comments, or better yet, post a picture of it on Instagram and tag me in it. And if you haven't seen any of my other projects, go check out my channel and make sure you're subscribed so you see what all I have coming up.